I'm going to use this mic so I can move around a little bit. Almost there, guys. All righty. Andrew, do you want to? No, that's fine.
I think I, it's Brian,
Oh,
so
yeah,
I don't feel
I'm
like
sorry.
I need to make
I was going to take it away, Barry. Sorry.
No, you're really good. That's
Go
fine.
ahead.
Everyone, this is Brian Wallace. No, we are thankful for you putting in a bid for this project, and we are excited to hear what you have to present to us tonight, so take it away.
All right, we'll see if you're still excited at the end. So, hey, everybody. You all know me, but you don't know who I am, probably, right? So, who am I? Well, I'm a longtime resident, obviously. We'll get this. My wife is a lifetime resident. My kids, 7 of them, have been all the way through the Homewood school system. I've got 4 that have graduated, nobody in jail. So I'd say that's pretty good. I've got over 30 years of video experience. I'll get into all the different ways that matters. I spent 20 years, or almost 20 years, in news related to Fox 6 and ABC 3340. I was the guy running around with the camera, with the recorder, the live truck. That was me for almost 20 years. We did live shots constantly, every day. When you see that reporter standing there, somebody's behind the camera. We had deadlines, incredible deadlines. We'd start a story at 4, we'd have to be live at 5. So I learned an awful lot about meeting hard deadlines. I learned an awful lot about how to troubleshoot things very quickly but still provide a professional product. And that has transcended into everything that I do. A big part of what I loved was weather chasing. I got 3 tornadoes on tape. Only professional photographers got that, still got that. So I'm touting that, yes. I was a part of pretty much every major news event you can think of. I was second person on scene after the abortion clinic bombing. All of that to say, it's because I know the people. I've been around this area, I've been here for an awful long time, and I've seen a lot. Of note is that my beat was city councils, covered this one for a long time, and Jefferson County Commission. So just in my daily life, I learned an awful lot about the government process, how everything works, how to dial around a few curves, all of those different things that you definitely learn. I got my degree at UAB late in life, in my 30s. I was tired of missing all my kids' stuff, tired of spending 4 days in a car covering a hurricane. So I went back to school late, got my degree in communications management, and switched careers. When I did switch careers, the first opportunity that I got was to be Director of Communications and Public Relations for the Birmingham Salvation Army. Best job I've ever had. Wouldn't have left, except that I had responsibilities, and that's a nonprofit, as we all can understand. I was there in April of 2011 when the tornadoes hit, so I got about 20 years of experience in about 3 months, to say the least. From there, I became the Director of Communications at the Birmingham City Council. When I got there, it was sad, to say the least. The website was a mess. There was absolutely no social network. There was no infrastructure for communication. There was really not a lot. So I spent an awful lot of hours building that from start to finish. And they still use almost all of the systems that I put into place up until now. I still have a lot of communication with the folks that are there. So I'm cool. Currently, I'm the Director of Communications at one of them at the UAB School of Medicine. I am the Director of Communications for Alabama Performance and Birmingham Elite Volleyball Clubs. Those are because of my daughters. You can thank them. I currently manage all the video production, the website, and the social channels for the city of Homewood, and we'll get to how that all happened. And then I built and I manage the video production for my church. Point of all of that is that I heard somebody say earlier that one person can't do all of this. I disagree. And in fact, in communications, one person is designated to do all of this. That is their job. And they better get good at it if they're gonna keep their job. So you have to have many hats, and you have to be good at it. You can't be an expert, no, but you better be good at it. I tell you all these other things so that you understand the structure I'm gonna show you is based off experience, not my opinion. It's experience, and we'll get to those. Kind of give you a rundown of what we'll go over, the history of us, how we got here. I wish this thing would work, it's not. Fun with some data, we'll have some fun with that. And then the new stuff, video upgrades, website upgrades for the city of Homewood, of course, Parks and Rec site and branding effort. And the biggest reason that I think that we should be here, and the biggest reason that we, and should spend a lot of time on, is the new input and output communication and messaging structure, to allow for a lot of the things that we just haven't had in place for a long time. And then last is evaluation. There is no point in doing all this if you're not evaluating it on a regular basis. I have built many evaluation systems. The one that I have right now at the University of Alabama, at UAB, is quite complex. And so it's much easier to come down with it for something like this than to go up. Okay, so where did I start? This kind of is how it started. There was nothing, literally nothing. I was just a resident of Homewood, been here for a long time. Then all of a sudden, I was asked, hey, you want to build a website, or can you build a website for us? The old one is old, they were having too many problems with it, and so I did. That was my first entry into the city. After the administration and city leadership got a better idea of my scope of duties and things that I was capable of, they then asked, hey, can you build a video production system for us? If you look around at every one of these robotic cameras, I installed all those, which I had never done before, and I'm quite amazed they still work. But they do. That one was tough, let me tell you. All the microphones, all of the equipment that's in the back, the switcher, the software, all of that, I designed it, I put it in place, and so far it's worked. Have you guys seen? So, you know, I'm happy with that. Two of the biggest things that I was really happy to be able to provide was visuals for you guys. That was something that was never possible before, especially for people at home. There were visuals, and some of them, they would give them to you, and I even saw years ago there would be a TV and they'd put some stuff up, but the people at home would never see those. So in the recording, they would have no clue that the fence would have looked like, or what the driveway was gonna look like. So being able to provide that for you, I'm really happy that I've been able to do that. That's something that and that was hard. Y'all send me stuff 10 seconds before you want it up there. The structure to provide that for you was very difficult. And I stepped into a lot of piles getting it right, but I think it's okay now. Obviously, there's a lot of troubleshooting, as we found out a couple of weeks ago. That was fun. And of course, much more. And all of that still comes back to my news days, to be able to handle the live production. It is a beast in and of itself, and if you have no true experience with the system itself, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So we had the website, we had the video, but we had no social. There was nothing, zero. So at that time, it made sense to me. I went and talked with city leadership, and I said, hey, we've got this stuff, but nobody knows. So they agreed, okay, let's move into that, but they asked for it to be slow and minimal. This was new for all of them. This was a couple of administrations ago. This was new. They weren't prepared for it. They weren't comfortable with it. So we went very slowly into it. I tell you this because my approach and my planning from that day forward has always matched that. The budget that I give you, the posts that are informative, not messaging, huge difference, which I'll get into shortly. So that's all matched that. But it's time to take it to that next level, and I'm glad that we are considering that. I take these responsibilities very seriously. This is not something I have ever taken lightly. Want to make sure that there's a professional product and that it reflects our city accurately and in a timely fashion, whether you know it or not. I have been available 24/7 holidays. I was called on Monday to do some stuff. I get content at all hours of the night, and none of that is on you. That's always on me. I take care of that. And I've never charged extra for it, ever. I just do it. It's part of the job. So I think that's something that's important. All right, so let's have some fun with data. This is not exhaustive. If you guys want exhaustive, man, I can give you so much data, it's sickening. So this is just a picture. And the idea here is I want you to see growth. And unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry, can you kind of see it? They have the printout so they can see it better. You can kind of see it. Okay. So if you look up at the top, that's the website. Your average weekly views, and this is unique, is about 4,000. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good draw. Bounce rate's pretty decent. It's not the greatest, but it's pretty decent. But you actually get around 10,000 visitors a week. It's just a lot of repeats. But it's an awful lot of them. Your top pages, and this is overall since the dawn of this, since we started, no, this is the website. Number one by far is meetings. Number two is the forums. And let me be clear about the forums. These are not forums for comments and those type of forums that, you know, bog down websites. These are gas permit applications, blasting permits, tent applications, you name it. And I'll get into how that, a little bit more about that later. Anyway, council is third. Aren't you guys happier? Yeah. And fourth, although it says fourth is garbage, let me tell you, that is first an awful lot of time, especially during the holidays, because people want to know. Trash and recycle are right behind them. Garbage, trash, recycle have always been very prevalent. So if you look at these lines up there, the reason I show you this snapshot is between July and September. What happened between July and September? Huh? No, something else.
Oh,
Elections. I show you that to show you that the system works. People were able to access the information, and they came. And that's obvious with that huge spike. The other stuff, you got Facebook. I don't need to go over the numbers. The idea there is that there's been a trend up. That is not anything that I'm like, ooh, that's great. Pretty much everybody goes up every year. You get more viewers and you get more stuff. I mean, it's not the best. And Facebook sucks. Their algorithm sucks. They create a world for you now. And it's very difficult. Do not boost. Do not spend taxpayer money for boosting. That is irresponsible, I think. And organic growth is hard and very difficult. The thing about Facebook is the 3 housewives who are on Facebook, they get it. They get the information. So you only reach 3 of them. You reach the 3 that you wouldn't have before. Twitter, it's pretty good. I mean, we've got a decent amount of followers, as you can see the impressions. And impressions is interactions. As people who've actually interacted with us, they've gone up quite significantly. Obviously, a lot of that is elections in the last year. The followers is pretty good. That is all organic growth. That is, in case you don't know or haven't quite understood, when you are on Twitter and when you're on these, you're having a conversation. It's just digital. Well, if you have to gain 900 friends, basically, organically, it's hard. You think about trying to get 900 friends. So to get them and keep them and to have the interaction that we have, Twitter is a pretty good way. YouTube would not have those views and would not have a lot of that without that. This is just the last 28 days. Again, I can get you all kinds of stuff, top videos, top whatever, but of importance is that we had, just in the last 28 days, 808 views, 205 hours of people watching. So not too bad. As I take the time to evaluate what I do, the city is doing the same thing right now, and I applaud you for it. I think that this is needed, that this is a wonderful thing that you're doing, especially as it relates to overall communications. We have built a good foundation. It's a good foundation, so now we can build upon that. And how are we going to do that? Glad you asked. So there's a few things. I'll get to the basic stuff first. So video service upgrades, and this is all part of the video stuff. If you remember, last June, Councilor Mike Higginbotham came to me, said that, of course, with the pandemic, hey, we want to outfit the committee room with everything we need so that we can have the public in there. So I did that, and that's actually still in the budget. We haven't gotten there because we hadn't moved back in there. When we move back in there, we will. It includes robotic camera, audio, and online access, some of the main stuff that you've got. In the meantime, we've been in here. I apologize for all the tape and all of this. It was meant to be temporary. If it turns out, for whatever reason, that it is permanent, these will all go away and it will be very different looking. For now, that's just the way it is because it's where we are. You had mentioned in the previous interview about COVID and Zoom. Obviously, we moved into that realm. If we continue to stay with that, one of the things that I want to be able to do is probably here. I'm not really sure, either here, I'm not sure which side. You're going to see Zoom, so you see it all the time. That way you can see who's there and who's not. There isn't a reason to go that far because it's going to cost, and it's going to be a little tricky to do until we have truly made that decision. Let's go, we're going to do this long term. It sounds like we are, but we haven't made the decision yet. Once we do, that's something that I'm going to provide for you guys. As we all found out 2 weeks ago, that equipment back there is over 15 years old, and it failed on us. So I've been working with JJ, Lee, and James on a plan to replace it. Part of that plan is going to provide much better individual control back there for me. It's not going to change what you have. You still have to speak into the mic. But from my end, I will be able to control an awful lot more. It will also be a lot of digital audio that we'll bring in to start thinking about the future. And I'm still a fan of analog though, because analog audio is much easier to deal with. So this is the next step in the visuals. I've been thinking this through, and I figured out how to do it. So basically what I'm going to do is when I get a visual, it's going to come up here, but now I'm going to have it to where you can find it and see it on your device, your phone, your iPad, your computer. Because as you guys know, I'll pull it up here, but then I have to come off of it sometimes. People are speaking and so forth, so I have to leave it, and you guys aren't able to see it. Well, now you will. You can stay on that and zoom in and do whatever you want with it the entire time. So I look forward to being able to put that into existence for you. All right, website. So some of the website upgrades, one of the biggest things, look, I'm constantly working with the website, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Part of my issue has always been I don't get enough feedback. And so, you know, I'll talk to a neighbor or hear from you guys or hear from somebody else about some great thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, and so I'll add it. But if I don't hear it, I mean, I can only think of so many things. The word focus group, you're going to hear an awful lot from this point forward. Focus groups are a diamond. They have every step of the way in my career, I have found those to be the way to do it. You get your citizens to tell you. You get them to tell you how to build it, what they want, and you build it from there. One of the big things that I would like to do immediately is change the navigation. I've wanted to do it for some time. As we start intertwining the new communication structure to allow citizen input, that navigation is going to be important, and you're going to see some of that here shortly. So I want to do that. It's going to be quite robust and quite different. Basically, when you came to the homepage and you went up top, it's huge, and it would be a lot better and easier to find things. You know. So speak to us, Homewood. This is the next thing. This is going to be a permanent page. I call it Speak to Us Homewood, but we can name it whatever we want. The idea of this is their page. You're going to see some of the things that we're going to provide on there, from polls and public comments and all of the different things. But essentially, everything will try to direct input to there. So it's going to be a very big page. It's going to be very prominent on the home page. Probably something that pops up in your face constantly, whatever it is, to make sure that people can find it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. I have been working to improve a lot of interactive online services for a long time, and I get crickets. sometimes. And sometimes they're like, okay, well, luckily for me, when YP came in, we started discussing one of the projects that I've been wanting to do for some time. And that was to create forms instead of the printout. So anytime somebody was gonna do an electrical or a blasting permit, all of that, they had to print it off, fill it out, and bring it up here. We got rid of that. It took me about 2 months. It's 40-something forms that are on there now, and they're all online. The feedback has been tremendous especially from staff, because they love it. It comes into their email box with the PDF, has all the information. They don't have to print stuff off. They don't have to save paper. There's all kinds of great things with it. So the positive feedback I got, I started thinking about, okay, well, what else can we do? So I reached out to the director of Public Works, Berkeley Squires, and I said, hey, there's a few things that I think we can do right off the bat to kind of help. He is on board. He told me I could tell you that. I did ask him, because, it's Berkeley. And it would be something that we would implement immediately. First thing is starting and stopping your garbage. Right now people have to call, which isn't the end of the world, but I can tell you Robin doesn't like handling all those calls, so that would eliminate that. Requesting valet service is a wonderful, wonderful thing that we have in this community, but often people don't have the knowledge of how to get that, how do they get it. We're gonna make that pretty prominent for them, especially for the older community, so that they understand that they don't have to drag that garbage can out to the curb, that somebody else will do that for them. Reporting a problem, and this is, we'll get into some of this here in a little while, but the idea here is very simple. They mentioned it before, street layout, manhole cover missing, all of those things. And so there's gonna be a way, and we're working on that because part of that has to be staff bandwidth, because staff is gonna have to handle some of these. Before we start going gangbusters, we gotta make sure we're not putting too much on their plate. But there is a way to do it. I've done it before. At Birmingham, I did it. It's just minimal. It's not quite as robust. It would be defined like 10 things that somebody could report. It wouldn't be beyond that. So anyway, and then important alerts. This is something that I wanted to do for an awful long time. When there's a road closure, when there's all kinds of stuff, the channel of communication to get to me has never quite been there. I talked with Berkeley at length about that, and we're going to change that to where that is something that's almost instantaneous. It's probably going to be a Google Doc that employees will be able to just update. It will work into their current workflow. It won't be anything new. But then that Google Doc will be not only displayed, but I have a way for that to automatically populate in other ways. So all of those things would happen in a pretty quick period of time. So we'll see if that works out, but that's at least the plan. And then we got the new Parks and Rec site. This has been in the works for quite some time. COVID really slowed it all down, and this process has also slowed that down. But I did meet with them when we first started talking about it, and it's more than just a site. They want to rebrand everything. If you notice, you may not know, every single sport has a different logo. It has different colors, so they want to change that. They want it all to be one thing, so that when the kids are wearing their shirts and they're playing Vestavia and they're playing these other places, it's consistent. Everybody starts to know that's Homewood, that's who that is. Because half of them you can't even tell it's Homewood. You don't even know the softball one, you don't even know it's Homewood. You really don't. So there's going to be a branding effort to rebrand pretty much everything. The other part of this is that I don't think I need to explain too much about the communication that sometimes comes out and how hard sometimes it is to get it. And that is only because of staff bandwidth in that as well. There's just so much they can do, and they are very overwhelmed. So we talked at length about some ways that I can manage it for them, in some ways I can't, and how to make it easy for them. So that is also part of this. So it's not just the site build, it is part of that. I think and Jennifer had mentioned this before, is looking at ways to make all of our websites more seamless, where they kind of fit together. Unfortunately, unless you rebuild all of them, you're never going to be able to make them, branding-wise, you're not going to make them the same. But there are ways to link them. The great thing with the Parks and Rec is as we build that, that's going to be intertwined. So you got one of them. I've talked with the chief of police. I'm willing to do it for free and build them one because it's so bad. And I'm serious, I've told him I'll do it for free, man. So that's possibly one. And if it is, and they also don't do content. Theirs would just be a build, which is also easy. They don't update it with much of anything. It's pretty just, here's the information. And so then you would have an opportunity, so there would be 3 sites that would be pretty cohesive. And we can start thinking about others later, but the idea you get is how to make them cohesive.
Hey,
So here's,
hey, I'm sorry,
No.
I'm not trying to interrupt, but,
Good.
roll it back.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, you're giving us lots of great information, that's why I don't wanna,
You said he's got extra
I
time.
did, yeah.
I'll move along. I've been trying not to go, I can go much faster, trust me.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of information, so I've been trying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I've built a lot of these systems. This isn't anything new for me, especially in the government realm. And the most important part is two-way communication. You absolutely have to have that. The best systems all have one thing in common. They constantly learn and they constantly evolve. If you stop learning, you got a bad system. So this is a start. It's not the end, and it's not going to be perfect. It's going to take time, but it can be done. It can be done efficiently. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are specific ways to get it. We're going to use the website as the channel. There's no reason to do much of anything else. It's pretty simple. That's that citizen input page. Speak to us, Homewood, if that's what we want to do. Other notable channels, just for your knowledge, TextMyGov, and Mountain Brook actually just added this to theirs. The thing about TextMyGov is we're building it, that's what we're doing. And what you're gonna see is we're gonna build it, so you don't need them, and they cost. 311, I was part of implementing that in Birmingham. It's a fantastic system, but you would have to hire somebody that is their job. That's first. And secondly, it takes an awful lot of staff and time to build it to begin with, because it's yours. This is you, and you have to build it out. It's quite expensive. Anyway, but you can look at those, and if that's, hey, those are other channels we want to do, fine. But those are notable ones. All right, here's the main stuff. So how can somebody have input? I'm a citizen. How can I have input? How can I say what I want to say, okay? So I've got 6 goals and the methods to which, and again, these are not exhaustive or hard and fast. These are in my experience, these are what work. First goal is, did everybody get a chance to be heard? And that's important. Well, so what's the methodology? The public comment forum. The goal is to gain ideas from citizens not thought of before. Focus groups, polls, and surveys. And incidentally, I haven't mentioned citizens advisory boards. That is another option. Those are hard and they're difficult to really become something, but that is an option. But I didn't put it on here because the ones that I have been a part of were very difficult. Citizen preferences for current items to be voted on, obvious polls, surveys, comment form, ascertain public sentiment about community issues, so things that may not be on your agenda, but things that are an issue in the community, and you can use any of the methods for that. Staying informed about the public needs, that's anything. And then of course, reporting a problem, which I discussed. You've got the public works one that we discussed. So that's them talking to you. That's the flow of them. Now you've got to talk back to them. As I mentioned before, we've been doing informational, not messaging. Very, very, very different, okay? If we move into the messaging, you've got to have planning, content generation, and you've got to have somebody with municipal experience to know how to handle this. This is a very different world. You must have the ability to know how to manage it. Otherwise, you have to approve it, you have to approve it, you have to approve it, you have to approve every message that goes out. That's not feasible. You have to be able to trust this person and this, whoever it is, you have to be able to trust that they're going to be able to do it. The other thing, once you start messaging, your feedback is very different. When you say there's a meeting Monday at 6 and here's the agenda, about the only feedback you're going to get is, did the meeting change? Did something like that? But when you put out a message about 18th Avenue and some, all the different things related to what's going on over there right now, the feedback's going to be very different. Okay? So somebody, whoever it is, they have to know how to respond if you respond. They have to be able to manage it if it's a crisis. When I was at Birmingham, one of our counselors tackled the mayor. It was on my watch, if you remember that. And just like the tornadoes in 2011, I got about 20 years of experience in about 2 days. Jonathan Austin was not a help, I'll tell you that either. Anyway, and then have you got trust? Do you trust this person with your messaging? Do they have the experience? Do you trust that they're gonna put something out that you're not gonna get a phone call that night? It's why in the world did you say that? It's very important. I use the ladder truck metaphor, and we're getting close to the end, sorry, I'm moving as fast as I can. I use the ladder truck metaphor. When I was in news, I could teach, right now I could teach my youngest child to set up a ladder truck, to put it up, put the mast up, and get it ready. Not run a live shop, but get it up, right? But what happens when something goes wrong? That's when you gotta have somebody with experience. Somebody can tell you, I can post, I can do this, I can do that. Yeah, of course you can, anybody can. That's not rocket science. But when something goes wrong, do you have the experience to handle it? Do you know how to handle it? And have handled it before. It's very important. So the channels for output, I'm gonna push text and emails. People want it to them. They don't have to go find it. They want it to them. We now have this text system. This needs to be blown out. I mean, it needs to be great. And I would love to see an email system. So if Melanie wants the agendas, as soon as those agendas are ready, she gets emailed those agendas. So that it's pushing to them. These are two big things that I would like to see grow. Obviously, you still have the social and website. While social has growth, it's slow. There's no doubt, but it's like a net. You still have to put out the net. You have to put it out as wide as you can, even if it only touches 1 or 2 people. You've got to make sure that you've put the word out to everybody you possibly can. So I would still keep the same channels, and then on screen at meetings, I can see elevating a lot of what we do, where you see it on screen, a lot of the messaging and a lot of some of the other stuff. Lastly, see Jetty evaluation? No, okay. Half of you are asleep, that's okay. I won't get into all these, you guys can read them, but essentially, it's very detailed. Your social network, here's your data sources that you're going to look at, your goals, and how often I would report that out to you, which is quarterly. Evaluating the website, which again, focus groups and so forth, quarterly. Evaluating the video production, evaluating this input and output structure that I just mentioned to you. Having the citizens come in and tell you what's working, what isn't. Having you guys say what's working, what isn't. You guys hear an awful lot from your constituents, so it's going to be vital to have that. That one's biannual though, and I point that out simply because that's going to be a slow process. You're going to have a number of things happen. You can't base it off of one bad experience. You're going to have a lot of them to know if that system works, and it's going to take time. It just is. It's not going to be something quick, but it can be effective. It can still be effective in the short term. Evaluating the city staff's goals for communication. We talked about the internet. That is going to be very difficult, and I'm not going to get too much into that because it's going to be very difficult for an external person to do that. You can't, as an external person, you can't manage a lot of that stuff because you don't work for the city. So while I think that there are some things that we can do, and I've talked with JJ especially about it, and I've talked with department heads about it, there are some things that can be done to help them. But unless you hire somebody that actually works for the city, that's going to have boundaries. It's never going to get far enough. And that's it. I thank you. Sorry if I took too much, but this was an awful lot of stuff that I needed you guys to know.
Yes, and Ms. Andrews has a question.
I have one question. I want to check in on you. You are a one-man shop. What
Yes.
happens if Brian Wallace gets cold or Brian Wallace has COVID or Brian Wallace
And so you
wants to
can,
take a vacation day? Who covers?
well, I've been doing this for a long time and I haven't missed one.
That's true.
In my 7 kids, I'm blessed with 2 sons. Both have been trained back there. You guys don't know it, but they are. And they are my backup. If something happens to me, they'll be the ones back here. As far as anything else, like if I can't reach a computer, we got bigger problems. But as far as this goes in here, and my father-in-law actually said he wants to do it, but both of my sons have been, my oldest especially, he could come in here. He couldn't do what I can do, but he could get, your meeting would get recorded and you would have it up. So, and it would be very basic, but he can do it. He is my backup.
That's the question I was asking. I'll give you, if we, on Monday night, you would have
Yep, and I have, I still have a lot of friends in news. So I have directors, and I've reached out to them before, and they've all told me if it hit the fan, they would come in here, and they could come back there with that system, and they could run it almost without any training, because that's what they do.
And I don't know, does anybody, Melanie or Nick, y'all know me? My only other thing, and it was funny, because I thought of this question before it actually happened, which was, what's the plan when everything goes wrong? But we experienced it live and in person, So, and you did exactly what you should have done, which was troubleshoot it and fix it. I mean, it didn't get fixed immediately, but it did get fixed. So, my question is, I mean, what is that process? What is the process when something goes wrong?
And in the case of what happened, I'll use that as the obvious example. In the end, you prioritize. That's what it becomes. What do you need? Well, we just needed the meeting. We had to have the recording, and we just needed it. Well, I was able to make that happen. And I can always make that happen. I have, this camera right here is actually my backup. It rolls the entire meeting, so if anything ever happens back there, it's all here. I actually have the sound piped into it, everything. It's only a wide shot the whole time, but it's there. That's my backup to if the system fails. I also have battery backups and all kinds of other things, so.
Anybody else?